been there the whole time. Just keep looking up and open up your eyes. Don't get lost in a crowd. You were made to stand out. The Wonder Creative Podcast.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad you're here. I have an amazing interview for you today, or conversation, whatever you want to call it. I sat down with a business coach that I personally have worked with a couple of different times, once in 2021 and then once this year. And then we kind of just keep in touch with one another. Her name is Morgan Rapp. We just sat down and had a conversation about business, and it was really great. I feel like we covered a lot of different topics here. We talked about everything from like systems and marketing and funnels and leveraging all these different things. And then also passive income, very hot topic. When is it time to invest in a coach? How do you invest in a coach or a course? Lots of good meat, I feel like, for anyone, no matter where you are in your business. So I'm really excited for you to hear it. I hope you listen to it in its fullness. It's a little bit of a longer conversation, but I feel like it's worth it. But I invested in a program that Morgan Rapp started for designers to help them learn how to grow their businesses and scale. And I did that back in 2021. I worked with her again in an intensive kind of program over the summer. And so that was super helpful for me, especially as I start kind of moving into some new things with maternity leave and all of that stuff, and planning some new offers and services. So it's been super helpful for that. So we talk a lot about how to explore different things in your business and how to know, like, okay, something is working for someone else. Will that work for me? And just really like taking a broader view, a more holistic view of some very I feel like hot button topics with business. So I hope you stick around and listen to the full episode. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it. Thank you for doing this so much. It means so much to me.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun. I feel like we always have such good chats, so I was really excited.
Well, I guess you can just introduce yourself if you want, and I'll just kind of ask you some questions as we go along, and then if we get off into a rabbit trail, we can follow it. But who are you? What do you do? And just kind of introduce yourself to my audience, because I don't know how many people will know you, but I do talk a lot about you because I have invested in a couple of your courses. So I know people have heard your name.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Morgan Rapp, and I've had my business, an online business, for over 10 years. And so I feel like I have been through quite the journey through all of that and involvement. And so kind of like quick story of how I even started an online business. I feel like I kind of did it by accident, but I graduated from college and struggled to figure out what I actually really wanted to do, because I feel like I'm the kind of person who has a lot of interests, and also I just really loved to learn. Like, I remember thinking, even when I graduated from college, that I would love to stay in college for forever. Like, I just love that environment and like learning. And I also felt like I was a more creative person, just like all growing up. Like, I did art and like wrote music, played the guitar, like things like that. And so I didn't quite know exactly where I was going to land, because I think like I ended up graduating in PR and business and sociology and art, like all minors. So it was like this weird kind of little mix. And it's not one of those things where you're like, yes, like I'm going to become a doctor. It's like, that exact path, right? And so I even graduated from college, even though I enjoyed it, like the most I ever made being employed by someone was $11 an hour. And so I found myself feeling like I was constantly overlooked, like my value wasn't valued, or really like what I had to offer wasn't really valued, or I felt like I just struggled to feel like seen, in the workplace with kind of the set of skills I had. And I remember I would cry all the time at the job I had. And then I got pregnant with my son. And so that was kind of the catalyst for me to quit that job and go full time. Around that time, I had started helping a friend with her wedding invitation business. It didn't make a whole ton of money, but we started getting asked to do logos and websites and things like that. We're like, oh, this is so much better. And we make better money. And it's like kind of the same amount of work,
Yeah.
you know? And so we both actually quit around the same time. So we both had our first kids, and that was 10 years ago. And then I didn't go back to a workplace because my initial win was having flexibility, basically. However, I didn't know what I was getting into. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into running a business. That's like part of my journey, is just really knowing what that looks like. I started out just charging hourly, like $25 an hour. I was like, yes, this is so exciting. And then I would say the other catalyst point, like in my journey, was realizing I was just really undercharging, and so much more of my time and capacity, was taken up than I really realized with actually running and operating a business, right? I kind of felt like after I got taxes done, like I had like an expensive hobby of sorts, I don't know if anyone relates to that, but I didn't really know like how to really focus on profit. And I was kind of just like pricing, like stabbing in the dark.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think as my plate got more full as a parent, and I was also having to pay for childcare and all these things, right? Like my life was changing. I just started to take my business more seriously, because like a low point was like we couldn't pay our mortgage. And I was just like, this is not sustainable, like this like crazy up and down. And that was just like this ultimate catalyst for me, because I was going through like, I should probably go back to work because I actually would make better money and have health insurance.
Yes.
And probably be less stressed out.
Yeah. Can't say I
But
haven't
I
been
wanted
there.
to keep the flexibility. Yeah. So I was considering going back to a full-time job because of like benefits, and it'd probably be less stressful, but I wanted to maintain the flexibility because at that point I had 3 kids. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of throw my Hail Mary and just really focus more on pricing and sales, really figuring out a lot of those elements, and like profitability was kind of my first initial focus as far as like traction in my business. So then that year I doubled my income, and that was like my first like 6-figure year. Around this time, I also split with my friend / business partner. So I went on with the business on my own at this point. I think this was about like 2017. So I was in this like weird mix of being like, whoa, I'm like alone in this business. It also was good for me because of the growth that I experienced, but I kind of had a lot of doubts, I think, which is normal, but I like signed up for some MLMs. You know what I mean? I just did like stupid things.
Not the
Right?
MLMs.
I know, but like it made me realize, I'm like, why am I splitting my focus? I think I was scared, right, of or maybe I'm just trying to feel out like my potential still in some of those areas. I know. And I never actually really sold anything with MLMs. I like bought like all the product, and then it just sat there like probably like $4,000,
That's what I hear that happens to people whenever they do MLMs, is like, it's the inventory that like, I watched that LuLaRoe documentary and I was like, oh my God.
I know. I don't think I've ever admitted this out loud on a podcast. So just putting it out there.
Exclusive.
But I mean, it's just an example of like where my mind was, right? I was just like grasping at anything.
Yes.
But really
desperation.
really desiring to make a good income for my family, but also like having a ton on my plate. And it's just like such a hard spot. But I did start to see traction once I really invested my focus and really just said, yeah, I can do this, and also like just really move forward in continuing to learn. And like, I don't know if you have heard that saying, but it goes like, where focus goes, it grows, or something like that. And so I feel like that's what happened. I just hadn't really known that's where I needed to focus.
Yeah.
And so I grew my business as a solopreneur to 6 figures, and that felt like such a big deal. I had my first like 10K projects, 15K projects, like just to be bold to charge that much. And I started implementing some forms of value-based pricing and things like that. And so then when I feel like I had some of that down in a more solid way, I'd get a lot of questions like in my DMs from designers who'd be like, hey, I want to learn more about how you're running your business or how you were able to double your income, just naturally getting all those questions. And then I felt like, oh, like I do think this is important because in general, the creative industry is undercharged.
Yeah.
And back then, even there weren't a lot of like six-figure entrepreneurs. Like now it feels like there's a million, like
Yes.
7 figures. Now 7 figures is the new, like, or 8 figures is the new 7 figures. You know what I mean? Like it's just like keeps going up. But
Literally.
back then it was like, I don't know, it felt like such a huge milestone and felt like really empowering and also made like a big impact for my family just to feel like, oh, we can pay our bills,
Yes.
and have some level of like consistency. So then I started Design Biz Mastery, which was my first like group coaching program.
And what year was that whenever you started it?
Yeah, it was 2019. So like pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was like my first like one-to-many kind of offer.
Okay.
And just diving into that world and sort of creating a new business from scratch, which I didn't know I was doing in a way, right? It's just a totally different business model.
Yeah.
I also created Amplify Shopify, which is my first course. And that was about teaching designers how to offer Shopify sites to clients and charge between like 5 to 10K for a productized Shopify site, essentially like a productized service.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so then I started to dive more because with that business model, I needed to dive more into marketing and sales funnels and messaging. So basically all these other parts of owning a business, because at scale, those things matter way more. Or basically when you start to get into courses and one-to-many offers, you need a lot more assets. You need the messaging up front to be more solid. And people don't talk about that part as much. It's really fun, but it does take time and it takes a lot of work.
Yes.
And even though they're more leveraged offers long term, it takes a long time to get there. So I always say like passive income is not passive. It's just different.
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, but it also is really fun. And I do think it's something everyone should explore because the possibilities at some point. But I also think that a lot of the skills that I learned in my service-based business and a lot of my values like bled over or do continue to, bleed over into how else I run my business too, right? On the one-to-many side. Yes, I was still doing a lot of design work too for a long time.
Okay.
Like last year was like my last project as far as a Shopify site because I specialized in Shopify in that journey. And so my last e-commerce site was just the end of last year. So like I still was doing client work for a long time.
Okay.
I don't know if that was like the best decision because I had like 2 more babies. So it was kind of too much at some point. Like,
and design work takes so much energy, so much energy.
Yes. And so I want to be transparent. Like I do think like some of my client experience suffered during some times of like overwhelm with like being pregnant or having kids and stuff. And so for me, even though in some ways like I enjoy that kind of work, I felt like at the end of this last year when I had my other baby, I was like, okay, I need to pause and really evaluate. And it wasn't even like saying goodbye for forever, but I just felt like I really needed to fix my client process. I also was done with custom work. So that's like a whole conversation. The more custom something is, the harder it is to systematize it. The harder it is to offer a good delivery. And I think that's just something that took me more time to really figure out. But the end of last year, that was my last custom project. And so I said, never again, but I will do a productized service or something. And I actually still do one-on-one, in some capacity with coaching. But now I'm shifting actually my services from Shopify into another area. So I'm not like anti-service. I just think that, the more custom something is as a solopreneur, the harder it is to systematize, the harder it is to actually offer a really good experience because it's almost like if you were running a t-shirt company and like sewing the sleeves on, right? Are you going to be able to scale? Are you going to be able to really monitor quality? It's going to be really difficult. And so anyway, so that was something I feel like it's like a big lesson that I feel like I learned along the way as well.
For where I'm at personally, it's like I had this realization that the way that I've run my business, which is like one-on-one custom work this whole time.
Yeah, we all start there.
Yeah.
You know?
And I feel like it's important because like what you're talking about, like it taught you a lot of values that you could carry into other parts of your business to like grow it and like in the coaching side and all that stuff. So like it's good, but like it got me so far, but it can't get me the rest of the way. Like, because I just have a different life now. Like I'm going to have 2 kids, you know? So it's just like, it's going to be, different, and I'm not going to have the same energy that I do now to continue one-on-one custom work just all the time. So that's why I was like, I need to like figure out something that works for me right now, because I need to like serve others, but I need it to serve me too, because I'm not going to be able, I can't give people something from an empty place. So like, I just had to kind of rework. I remember you talking about how like coaching, it just felt a lot more like it resonated with you more being a mom. Is that true still?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think as a catalyst of, yes, me becoming a parent and having it feel like I can offer a lot of value in another way outside of just the things that I was doing, right? Like just the service, but more being able to show someone a roadmap to how they grow their business. But that was only possible because of all the experience that I had or do have, and also doing things wrong and also, you know, just really learning from a lot of those things, and like natural maturity as a business owner. Like I even think, because I recently had an experience where I hired a done-for-you person to create, you know, Instagram posts and like marketing assets for me over the summer while I was moving. It's just a really interesting experience. Basically, she didn't deliver anything and still charged me thousands of dollars. So I totally got screwed over and didn't have a good experience. And I could see how her mindset was as like a newer entrepreneur and like really focusing on herself versus my experience as a client.
Yes.
Because basically she blamed me for being too busy, when the whole reason I hired her was because I knew I was going to be busy. And I was totally happy with her just running with it and just taking it off my plate, right? Like that's why I hired her.
Yeah.
Instead, she didn't have a good onboarding process. She didn't collect everything that she needed from me. She didn't even know what she needed from me, really.
Yeah.
And also, it's kind of a hard skill to create final end marketing assets that include good messaging and also copywriting and, you know, design. If you think about it for Instagram, there's a reason why running social is like kind of a lot of work.
Yes.
I think she lacked the skills because she basically was like, well, I didn't feel like I had enough direction from you on what to do. And I was like, well, if I have to tell you what to do, then by that point, it doesn't save me any time or energy. So why would I have hired you? Basically, I hired her hourly, and then like the month would go by, and then she's like, well, if you still have to pay all those hours, but I didn't know what to do, so I didn't use them all, but you still have to pay them. So it was just really interesting for me to reflect on the way she handled the situation. And I saw my old self in her in some ways of blaming clients for their experiences.
Yeah.
And I think what was, I guess, from a client perspective of someone who is actually really busy, and you think about, those are the people who are hiring us out for done-for-you services, right? Like they want you to just take it off your plate or off their plate.
Yeah.
Sometimes each person's going to need something a little bit different. But I think what ultimately matters isn't that all your systems are perfect or even your client experience is perfect, because I don't know if that's a thing, because humans vary, you know, and they're so different. But it was more her attitude, right? What I needed was for her to say, hey, I realize you're a mom of 5 and like the whole reason you hired me was because you were busy, and you know, what kind of support do you need? Why did you not have a good experience? Why, like, you know, was our communication not great? What could have improved? But that takes like a certain level of like maturity, and also not making it about you.
Yes.
But she didn't listen to me at all, nor, of course, obviously was she not curious, but I was like, man, that was a missed opportunity for her, because she's going to continue to struggle.
Yeah.
Right? Because
you would have given her a lot of good, you would have given her a lot of good feedback.
Yeah.
Like in a kind way, because you also have been there, like, you know.
Oh, totally. Like, I'm even someone who is familiar with services.
Right. So you were like almost like a safe person to like speak into that. Dang, that sucks.
It sucks so bad, but it also made me reflect on, when I maybe have done that in the past. And also like when I think about, I've had some students who'd be like, hey, this course didn't work for me. And I was kind of defensive. And I think now I'm like, okay, what was it that they needed that they didn't have? You know, how are they different as far as their learning style or lifestyle? And so I think with services or products, it's just a learning process to figure out how to help people in a way that does work for them.
Yeah.
And that's just like a whole other thing around client experience. I think it's interesting. But at least I think first step is really caring enough about your clients and customers, and not just saying, oh, I'm getting a buck. Like that's what she did, right? She's like, I got paid my hourly rate without having to do any work.
Yeah.
You know, I clocked my time. That's what her attitude was. It was just really interesting how little she actually cared about my experience, even if she felt like she was in the right? A lot of times our clients can be late. I've been late as a client too. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, like that's happened because of my lifestyle. My kid got sick, or I'm having to figure out hard decisions, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not intentional. And I think that's the case most often around client experience. So anyways, it's just been something I guess I've been reflecting on more, because no matter what your offer is, you're going to have people who don't have a good experience within it. And I think that there's 2 ways you can take it. You can go, okay, you're the problem to the client, or you can say, interesting. And you can like be curious about it and see and ask them. And I think it's really also like one thing that has helped, I think lately, as far as kind of a script that I have, is just saying, oh, I'm so sorry that you feel like you didn't have the experience that you were hoping for. In what ways, like I'm wanting to always improve my experiences and processes on my end. And do you mind if I ask you some more questions around what you were expecting, or what your learning style is, or what you have seen elsewhere where you did feel supported? What's interesting is that then they can tell you and give you ideas that you may not have had, right? And so I think it's just such like a powerful thing where you don't have to guess what your audience needs. They can tell you if you're willing to have the courage to
yourself.
Ask. Yes, that's the key, but it's hard because I haven't always done that, right? When my ego was like kind of fragile.
Yes, and I think that that's a really hard thing, like in the beginning of like starting a business, is you do have that feeling of like, I want to prove myself. I want to prove myself. I want to prove myself, and like show that like this is good, and like you're insecure, and you're trying to find a lot of like acceptance in what you're doing. And so if you feel any sort of failure, like it's detrimental, you know, and like,
you're already feeling so vulnerable.
Yes.
And so I think it is a natural reaction. However, I feel like blaming our clients or customers gets you nowhere, right? Yeah. Even if we're thinking about what actually does help you as a business long term, it will be caring about your customers ultimately for any business.
Yes.
You know?
And that speaks like with some of these new things that I'm working on, like internally, like that's something that I care about so much. And I feel like even like as a brand designer, whenever I started doing brand design work, like really making it a service in my business, like I personally was like, I just want to offer a really good experience for my clients. Like I want them, because this is a big deal, and like honoring the transaction, like they saved their money to work with me. Like I wasn't off, like I wasn't charging what I do now then, but it was a big deal to me that they were even paying me like $500. And I was just like, wow, And I think like having that mindset and like honoring that exchange between the client and the service provider, like staying in that mindset sets you up to be successful time and time again with clients. And even if someone has a bad experience, like exactly what you said, like humbling yourself to understand more so then you can provide a good service and not just get money. And like, obviously you want it to be profitable for you, but you also like, it needs to be benefiting your clients, or like, why are you doing it? Like why is this happening?
Yes. And also, especially being a solopreneur, or just in the online space, I think there is a lot of talk about scaling, right? Like scale, scale, scale.
Yeah.
And the other reason why I feel like I am where I am as far as like my mindset and in a way like rebuilding my business is because in 2020, that was like my first $1 million year. The pandemic hit and I was like, my business is going to die. Like, I was so dramatic about it, but actually that was one of the larger enrollments of Design Biz Mastery, and it stressed my systems, right? And also I got more different kinds of people within the program. I mean, I don't feel like I remembered a lot of like, I didn't get like a ton of negative feedback, but I mean like there were some gaps where people would tell me like, oh, I was able to do this, but then I was missing this, or it would have been nice to see this, or things like that. And I remember I wouldn't read reviews or even always like send them because I was scared to see, but now I'm like genuinely curious and I'm more like, how can I fill the gap? But basically with my business scaling, I think it was almost, I don't know if too quick was the right word, maybe, but like it allowed me to see that there are seasons for growth and then there are seasons for taking a step back. And I call them like unleveraged seasons, where you need to really look at those back end pieces and see where those gaps are, look at the feedback you're getting and fix them. So then you can take those like one step back, two, steps forward, basically. Yeah. So I'm back in an unleveraged season of my business. It's kind of driving me a little crazy in some ways, but also it's been really good because I feel like the feedback has been so helpful, where I'm getting more and better ideas around creating things that are more actionable for clients, and seeing through more of those one-on-one kinds of conversations, what they actually really need and like what is kind of fluff and like things like that. Yes. And so right now I'm in an unleveraged season, but it's been really helpful. And I think I've just had to accept that and be like, so my business isn't going to make as much money this year. Still pretty proud of it. Like it's still good. These seasons aren't talked about a lot. And they're also really important if you do want to scale, because often when you scale and you don't have some of these things figured out, it actually stresses you more, right? Yes. I was talking to a potential client about this, where she's like, I want all these sales. It's like an e-commerce business. And I was consulting her around like her funnels and marketing and messaging and things like that. She needed a lot of work in the back end. She didn't know her numbers. She didn't have all like a spot to collect her data. She was struggling with like project management between all these contractors. She needed to fix a lot of the leaky holes, in the business before she scaled. She was just like, more sales, more sales. And I was like, it'll stress you out more because you won't be able to deliver a good experience to your customers at scale. Like it's not a good thing. Like you need to fix these things. So anyways, it's just something I've been thinking a ton about lately.
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation. And like, I think it's so funny because I'm going to be like, my business will be 5 years old in March. And I'm like, That's like a long time, but also not a long time at the same time. Because like, I feel like I've come far enough where I'm like, wow, I've learned so much since I started. But then like, I'm just now, I feel like on the cusp of like truly growing, like to the point where there's a team and there's like, I'm not doing this all on my own. And so I'm having to make like big decisions, risky decisions, but everything is framed like my business is so special to me. And I feel like I'm never at this place where I want to just offer something to do it. Like I want it to be great. I want it to be excellent. But even like with some of these new services that I'm working through, I was like, there came a point where I was like, I have to just take a step. Like, it's not going to be perfect instantly. And so I need to figure out what makes sense to like be transparent with clients and be like, listen, I'm building this. I think it's great, but I need you to like show me a little bit of grace as I'm building this. And also like, you'll get a better rate, but just trust me and like, we'll figure this out together. But like still keeping the excellence there and not losing that, but also like being brave to take a risky decision and do something different as I'm growing.
Yeah. And so in the course that you joined that I made this summer, I talk about minimum viable product and the importance of that, because sometimes you're trying on a new service, a new offer. I always recommend any new thing, maybe it is a course idea, but try selling it one-on-one first.
Yeah.
To see if you even like it. What I see a lot is people are like, oh, I'm going to create a course because that's going to solve my problems. And it does not, because then it takes so much work to even create that thing. And then you realize, oh, this idea isn't resonating with people.
Right.
Right. And so I feel like it's so important to even validate the idea before you do a ton of work. And I've seen some people talk about validating the idea initially with a one-to-many type of container, but I'm always saying sell it one-on-one, see if it sells at all, and then sell it one-to-many.
And then
like
get like all that intel.
Yes.
Like you're getting all that information from that one person. So like, and it feels less scary. What I was sharing with you before we started recording about like my new service that I'm trying to like roll out, this person that I'm working with is a returning client. So she already feels safe to me and she already knows that like, I'm going to take care of her, So like, I feel like I'm set up for success in that. And also like her honest feedback is welcome and I honor it. And like, she's already like help me think through things. So I'm like, this is a perfect circumstance because I just feel like a lot of liberty and freedom to like really explore, which is what I've wanted to do, but I've just felt so scared. I felt so scared and so paralyzed to do anything new outside my norm. But it's like, if you put everything on the table, you have to know, like, audit everything and see what's actually working. But I love what you said about passive income or like courses and stuff like that. Because I feel like that's a big hot topic where it's like anybody can create anything and sell it online. And I'm like, yeah, but like my personal opinion is like, that doesn't mean that everyone should. I guess like there's a better way to do it and a not so better way to do it.
Yeah. I think the other thing I really think a lot about is with courses in particular, you are teaching other people information, usually, right? Mm-hmm. That in of itself is a skill to not just transfer things like basically, usually it's something that you figured out for yourself, but to be able to digest it down in a way that is understandable for lots of different learning styles and also actionable is really hard to do. And so I think that conversation is, I've never seen anyone talk about that, but being an educator, you have to learn even how to
educate,
or you should. Yeah. But think about teachers, think about, professors, like that is part of their training is how to actually teach. Course creators don't talk about that and they need to, because that's even if you've achieved a result for yourself, it is a whole different thing to be able to help other people get those results as well.
I would invest in something right now that would help me take all my thoughts and teach them. Like, because that's where I feel like I get tripped up is like, I have all of this, like, how do I break it down for someone? You know, I'm like, oh, just forget it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I just
totally.
can't. It's too much.
Well, just to give you an idea, most recently, that the course that I made this summer, for every 5 minutes, it took me about 10 to 15 hours of work. Just to give you an idea.
What? Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
To solidify all my thoughts and like distill everything, and then to then create the copy,
Wow.
the slides, record, edit, just to give you an idea, right?
Thank you
And
for that.
oh, you're welcome. But I mean, like, it was so much work. And even now I'm like, okay, I want to go back in and fill it in some areas and make this more actionable, or
Yeah.
add this template. So it definitely was minimum viable. It was a lot of work, like 15 hours a week when I was releasing 5 to 10 minute modules. So it burned me out a little bit. And so I kind of have been taking a pause and just doing like one-on-one stuff for now, because course creation is a ton of work. And that doesn't even include like putting it on an evergreen funnel, launching it again,
Oh
creating
yeah.
a better sales
Marketing
page,
it.
creating all the emails. I haven't even automated it or created the funnel for it. And then I also realized that the initial thing I was teaching on, it kind of shifted and evolved. So I'm glad I did that minimum viable kind of group.
Yeah.
And I did get like a lot of good feedback, but then I got a couple people who didn't have as good of an experience, or they felt like the content maybe was too, you know, they hadn't been in their business very much. And so it maybe was too advanced, which was helpful. So I realized that some people who got in were maybe too early in their business, but that was helpful for me to see.
Yes.
Initially, I was defensive.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I was just like, hey, like, why can't you see that, like, this is the way to do it? And like, you need to just dive in and apply these things and really make more of an effort, right? And I do think some of that was true, where they hadn't even actually really gone through all the modules, or weren't yet in a place where they actually really wanted to step into marketing their business, you know, just some things like that. I do think part of that was there, but I also think that I could have messaged it maybe better, in order to better state who it's for and who it wasn't for.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just don't know that, you know,
Yeah.
right off the bat. But I think that also is what helped me more recently really be like, wow, I just need to be more curious.
Yes.
You know,
And that
because
was
I still am learning these lessons, but I just mean people giving me that feedback has been helpful, but also to expect it from now on. Otherwise, people are just quiet and then they're not going to buy from you again.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you want them to at least tell you what you could change. If
Yeah.
you think about it, if you really think about it, it's more beneficial that people tell you where they haven't had a good experience. Because think about when we bought things and we didn't have a great experience, but we're not asked, or we're not ones to like proactively
Right.
maybe complain or something. And then,
Then
you're
you
just like,
just-
oh, I'm just not going to buy from them again.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes, like you said, like what we said earlier, a ton of humility and a lot of courage. Just understand that, like, you're not alone in that. Like, every service for every business, like every business gets a bad review, gets some sort of feedback that isn't ideal, but it's like what you do with it is what matters.
Well, and you know, I asked you to do an interview, right? To ask you about your experience and maybe where there were some gaps and where it could be better, or I was just so curious. And so that was one part of my process that I'm embarrassed to say I haven't done that before, where I actually really did one-on-one interviews and took that time, you know?
And what inspired you to do that?
I think because the next phase of my business, I really want to build offers that make an immense impact, because I am in this for the long haul and I know this, and also because I feel like this energetic, like, excitement around offering more resources around marketing and creating passive income, and really a business model that I feel like has allowed me to be the sole provider for my family and buy my dream home and all of these things that were so amazing and impactful, and the lessons along the way. And also the things I see in the coaching space that really bother me. I felt like this next stage of going slow and being really intentional and getting that feedback was so important in order for me to create the best products I've ever created. I actually decided to retire. I mean, I've been feeling kind of this ping to retire DBM and not just work with just designers anymore and teach about services for a while. Because in one-on-one coaching, I have been helping people with their courses and messaging and starting to shift their business model and make it more leveraged. So I've been doing it for a while. So now I'm just kind of more bringing those things to the table in a larger way. So yeah, I think that because I feel like this next pivot, I guess, in my business feels like where I want to be long term and where I want to have the most impact, particularly for women in business.
Yes.
I wanted to be very intentional, and it's honestly it's been slower than I think I naturally would like. Basically this whole year, I still need to rebuild. Like Q4, I'm actually not really doing much.
Yeah.
Because it's very time intensive. Like I said, I'm not in a leverage season really, because I have been doing more one-on-one and also, looking at feedback from that small group that I did. I want to add more things in before I relaunch it. And basically I have had to put things off and be like, okay, 2024. But without this slow pace, I would not have been able to figure out the direction that I'm now going in. So I'm actually glad that I slowed down as opposed to like jumping in and being like, oh, I'm going to make this like strong pivot without exploring.
Yeah.
Because then I'd probably have pivoted again.
Yes.
So now though I feel really good. But it's more just the building, I think, and that's pretty time consuming, but I feel excited about it. I feel really excited. So we'll
what
see.
would you say is like the mission of what you're doing right now for this next season of business, like the heart behind like what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? And so I feel like, I guess at this point, I'm really stepping into my purpose because I feel like in general, women undervalue what they offer. And also there's so much opportunity with an online business and also now with leveraging AI and automations and software to scale a solopreneur business. And I think more women particularly deserve time freedom. They deserve financial freedom.
Yes.
They usually also desire abundance, not even just for themselves, but for their children, for people they care about. Usually even extra resources. Women are amazing in that they want those resources for other people.
Yeah.
And I just think that women are amazing in that way. And so I think they deserve to make $300K a year, $500K a year, $1 million if they want. I think that is possible as a solopreneur if you structure your business a specific way. And so I guess I feel more passionate about doing that, but also like utilizing sales funnels and automation, messaging systems too, and business strategy, like really tactical kinds of things. I think mindset does matter, but I am the kind of person who feels like that gets overemphasized in the space. Like, I think it's like one of the pieces, right? But so many amazing things and like traction can happen when you feel more competent in your skills. And that's what creates confidence, is just actual skill stacking. In the online space, you'll see a lot of coaches just like really focus on mindset. But what you don't know is that they have automation, they have sales funnels that help them scale to that 7-figure business. But they're talking all about mindset. And I'm like, you could think really hard, but if you don't have those other things in place, you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
leverage. And so
Yeah.
I get frustrated by people not talking about that enough. So I guess I like
Yes.
to offer like very practical like business strategy, systems, and automation is my goal like in this next stage around building a business that actually gives you time and financial freedom. There's no way you can do that without leveraging in some aspects. Even
Yeah.
if you make more money, you won't have time and then it won't feel worth it, you know?
Yes.
So there's just basically so many things you can do. It does take some time to like build it and figure out what is your tech stack and how are you going to connect this to that? And what does your productivity system look like? What is your tech stack around your sales funnel? What are you going to say and when, you know, the messaging systems. But once you do lock it all in, it's really powerful because you can truly automate more of your
Yes.
marketing and sales. And that's when it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
that's what I feel like really passionate about helping people with.
And I think you're really good at it too. And like, I mean, I know you've helped me so much, and I feel like one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with you is because you were a mom and you've been around a while. And like, this kind of leads me to my next, like, it's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are coaches, that are business coaches now. I question, like, I don't know, some people I feel like just don't vet their coaches very well. And like think about what this person is talking about, and like, did that work for them? And how do you know it will work for you? And like, what experience are they delivering to their students? How many students do they have? Like, I don't know, just like reputable, like things that people just don't seem to look at before they just like go full force into something, being coached by someone. What are your thoughts, and how do people pick the right business coaches / courses for them?
I love this question. So I think what's important is to either learn from someone who is really similar in capacity as you, because if you have, for example, I have 5 kids, and then sometimes I had coaches who had none, right? And so their capacity looks totally different. And not to say that they were like limited in some capacities, but I just mean, and they could have even been empathetic, right? But the truth was that I am very limited in my capacity. So sometimes they'd be like, just like post more, or just launch more, or just, you know, repeat the things that you did before. I'm like, yeah, but I have like 2 more kids now, you know? So
Yes.
I felt like really frustrated in some ways, where it's just like, take more actions. And I'm like, but literally why I hired you is because I cannot take more actions.
Yes.
And so that's been like a frustrating thing. And so I think it is important to consider learning from someone who's built their business in a really similar way that you would like, who has similar values and also has like a similar capacity. I think that's important. I also think that it's important to have some clarity on where you're wanting to improve your business, because there's actually a lot of moving pieces to just growing your business, right? So you need to sometimes focus in really specific areas. And also, I feel like it's a red flag when anyone is just like scale, 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 and they're never really talking about anything like super tangible. But I think that I would be clear on, are you hiring a coach? Are you hiring a consultant? I actually put myself more in the consultant area because like in my one-on-one, I'm very hands-on. Like I sent my client like 10 emails that I wrote for her launch. And I didn't offer that, you know, or promise that even when she hired me, but she, you know, was launching next week and was feeling overwhelmed. And so I did like 10 emails for her, right? So most coaches won't do that. I've never had a coach who actually delivered anything to me. And that's something
it's more like
kind of
them,
bothered me.
It's more like them like providing, well, I mean, exactly what a coach does, like on the sidelines. They're giving you guidance, but they're not actually handing you anything. Is that what you're saying the difference between a coach and a consultant is?
So I would say there's three differences of roles. So like, because I come from a done for you background, it's hard for me not to offer some level of done for you sometimes, because I can fast track their progress really quickly often.
Mm-hmm.
And so my one-on-one includes more hands-on elements than any coaching I've experienced. And I've hired really expensive coaches, and none of them looked at my messaging. None of them were like, who's your avatar? Right? None of them were like, oh, what are your numbers behind the profitability of your offer? They were all like, well, your mindset is this. Or do you see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
not every single coach I've had good mentors, but I find even personally, I've had some frustrating experiences, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
And so when my one-on-one coaching, it is more hands-on. I'm like, send me your sales page, send me your emails. I'll read them over. Oh, here's a paragraph I would add in, or hey, here's some more details of your avatar. These are the things that are top of mind for them. Like I fill in gaps, if that makes sense, so that you're not left on your own, just being like trying to like improve your mindset or something. So I guess I put myself more in the consultant area because I'm more hands-on and I will tell you what to do if you want. Sometimes I'm in the coach role of also like a true coach doesn't tell you what to do, right? They say, what do you feel like is the best thing for you to do? They're there to kind of reflect and guide. And so a true coach doesn't always even have to have experience like growing or scaling in the same way that you want to, because they are more helping you with your mindset. So I would say I would be clear on, do you want to hire a consultant or someone who can just say, here's how to move forward and what you could do? Or do you want to hire a true coach who can guide you in some ways, but will just reflect back and usually won't tell you what to do, And I think different things can be better at different points. Then I would say the done for you element is something that most people don't provide unless that's like the specific, thing in the container, right? Like where like you hired them up front for like a done for you offer. I think I can't help it. Because that's my background.
Yeah.
So I mix that in to kind of over deliver and fast track things if I need, but it's not really normally something I promise as a part of my coaching packages.
Yeah. Okay.
But like if it's just more of the true consultant package, it is like, hey, here's like next steps. This is what you should do. Send me your sales page. This is what to put in it. These are the emails to send during your launch.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, here's the messaging. Like, basically it is kind of all fluid, but if you're hiring a true coach, then you just need to kind of know that and also ask them that, right? Like you can say like, hey, like what is your style as far as how you work with clients? Because I do think there's some overlaps basically between those three areas sometimes, but usually there isn't any done for you elements.
Yeah.
Just like kind of an
Wow.
oddball maybe in that way. And so I guess I think a lot about these nuances because I do put myself more in the consultant arena because of my level of experience.
Okay.
And also all the different business models I've actually had and been successful in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can offer a lot of different perspectives. So my style is kind of more blended where if you're stuck, I'll say, hey, this could be an option. This could be an option. Which one is better for you? So I at least like to offer options and tell you the trade-offs. And usually there are trade-offs because I'll say, what is your energetic capacity? Are you wanting a challenge in this season or are you needing to simplify? And you will make different decisions in that season. And then maybe next year it would look different for you. So that's kind of my approach is to really look at your current energetic capacity and to make decisions based on that and tell you, hey, like here are these two options and the trade-offs, what feels best in your gut for you. I feel like that's something I can offer because my personal capacity has gone up and down quite a bit. And I've basically done every single business model. So I can tell you like, hey, if your audience is small, I would consider sticking to having a high ticket service versus if there was a coach who's only done passive income, they might say, go launch a $17 product. It's just, that doesn't work for every person where they're at in their business.
Well, like even
though it's technically passive, it's not going to make you money. Or if you're in a place where you need cash, right? You need cash up front.
Yeah.
That's very real. And so going and creating a $17, mini digital product isn't going to solve your problem for cash.
Right.
So I just think it's all about choices and options and no wrong or right, I guess, is my approach.
Yeah. And that was something that I even like brought up, I think, in one of our coaching, like group coaching calls. I was like, I was thinking about launching like a smaller, like digital product. And you're like, well, if you don't have a larger audience, it may be harder for you to like really see any sort of like, sales from that. Like it would be better for you to do something more like this and then one day do that. And I was like, wow, I'm really glad that I mentioned that because you look and you see what other people are doing and you're like, I can do that. I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, I mean, they have different resources. They're in a different, they have different skill sets. Like you just have to like zoom out and be like, not everything that everyone else is doing is going to work perfectly for me.
Yeah, totally. And I also want to say like a lot of times my perspective leans more towards cash flow because I personally have had to be conservative because I'm a sole provider, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the nuance here is that everyone has differences there where sometimes they have a partner that actually, is financially providing or things like that. And so you have more room to experiment. That's just not everyone's situation.
Yeah.
And so I want to say the nuance here is that maybe you're in a place where you're ready for a challenge. You're ready for something different. And there's not a ton of financial pressure. So maybe you would make a different decision from my advice.
Yeah.
Because you've been in business 5 years. So it's like, I also feel like that is something that sometimes is the case as well. And so even my approach leans towards cash flow and prioritizing cash flow, but that's not also what everyone needs because everyone's situation is different sometimes too.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think that's the other, like, I guess some nuance there. And so that's what's also important though, when you are considering strategies, is it important for you to have cash flow or is it important for you right now in this season to be able to experiment and like kind of break out of the box and try something new because you need some exciting energy and you don't have a lot of pressure financially. I was going to say too, I think it's all about also managing your expectations because if you were going to, release a small course, you just have to know and expect that that won't make you money for like good money, like on auto.
Yeah.
For years.
Yes.
So I do think everyone should build assets like that and keep working on building up your audience and skill stacking in those areas. But just know it's not going to solve financial issues anytime soon. So you need to still maintain high ticket in some element with a small audience, right? And so that's what I guess my approach is if you need to make money in your business. So
yes, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad because I'm like, I've owned a business online for 5 years now. And like, people talk to me, you're like, you should just launch this. You should just do this and do this product and that
just
product.
Do it, right?
And
so
easy. I'm like, you act like I have not been in this space for years. Like if I thought it was easy, I would have done it already. I would have, but I know all the work that it's going to take. I didn't know it was like 5 minutes equals 15 to 20 hours. But now that I know that, I'm like, holy crap. But seriously, for real,
that
like
is the reality. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not that I'm not going to do it, but I just am going to make sure that I'm in a good place. My business is in a good place, like what you're talking about, to be able to experiment and to get curious and try new things. Like I have to make sure I'm in a good spot to do that. And so there's just like what you're saying, there's so much nuances to it. Like I would have never known that I would have learned all of this starting a business, but now I'm like, wow, I've learned so much. It's like parenting. You start out and you're
Totally.
like, sure, I'm not gonna let them have noisy toys. And then you're like, well, turns out all my kids have noisy toys. Because here we are,
Yes.
you know, and it's like same with business. It's just such a journey and a process.
It really is. And I also want to say too, if you're kind of in this place where you're like, okay, but then how do I bridge this gap though? Because you know, you do want more passive income at some point.
Yes.
And also you're going to need to free up capacity to build your audience, to create content, like to market your business more, because you have to do that with that kind of business model. And so this is why I'm so passionate about sales funnels, is because a lot of times what happens is we're like, oh, high ticket's not scalable, so I'm going to jump to then creating this thing. When you haven't leveraged yet the sales and marketing funnel for your high ticket offer. So what I mean is creating an email sequence that pre-nurtures them before they get to your sales call, so they're like 90% bought in. Right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
there's so much more you can do to prime people or potential clients for one-on-one offers.
Yes.
Still. And so I call it like, you know, building your full bridge. And I feel like I'm talking about this all the time because people think leveraging only exists in passive income, in the delivery. And you actually could have a leveraged delivery, but an unleveraged sales process and marketing process too. If you don't build funnels around a course either, you could just be launching manually all the time, which is also exhausting. So you do need to build your full bridge before you jump, because you have to free up your capacity and increase your conversions for your current high ticket offer to maintain your baseline. And then you can bridge over and create new things and then leverage that. Right.
Wow.
And so that's how you can make that transition and teeter. So that's the exact transition I made in my business. But I wish I knew how to automate my high ticket better, but I didn't really dive into sales funnels until I did one-to-many.
Yeah.
So now that's why I'm so passionate about offering this to service providers too, because there's so much more potential for you to leverage, even if you're doing one-on-one. So people, like, I just think we need to talk about that way more instead of jumping business models, because it just burns you out. Like,
that's so true.
Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's so true.
And so that's why I created the course I did this summer, was to show you how to build out that priming and nurture sequence for a high ticket offer. And in this case, it was more like a high ticket offer that was in like the 2,000 to 5,000-ish range. Yeah. Because the sales process might look different for something even more high ticket, depending. But I just feel like that is so important, and there's so much you can leverage there before you jump to digital products, fully passive courses.
Yeah, totally
That
agree.
just takes a long time, and you need to maintain your income a lot of the time, right? So that's what it could look like practically.
Is there anything else that you wanted to speak to or say?
Yeah, I think that was like the main thing that I guess has been top of mind lately that I've been wanting to share all around with more people, and just like kind of this shift I'm making. But if I could go back in my business, it would have been educating myself on sales funnels way sooner, really diving into more automation and systematizing, and not just with tech, but also messaging. So what I mean by a messaging system is really solidifying, oh, these are the main core topics I talk about. These are the problems my offer solves, right? And sales psychology and all of that, like messaging systems, like repeatable messages. So you're not just like creating and from the ground up every post.
Yeah, and you're not like,
feel like that.
What do I say?
You should have a consistent message. And then taking ownership of the customer journey is so important, of saying, why does my client not see the value? And not just saying, oh, people don't have money right now, or they won't buy this thing. This price is too expensive. Instead, if you can shift towards, what do I need to say and how many more touch points do they need in order to buy? Because the truth is, that same person who's like, I'm not going to buy your thing, they just went and bought something else for the same price. right?
Yeah.
It's all about prioritize, like helping them prioritize. And that happens through messaging, but also like more touch points, them seeing that message more. And there's just so many amazing, cool things you can do in order to allow that to happen through like email automation and also like the customer journey as far as when you introduce certain messages between having them be problem aware, solution aware, and offer aware, and being very intentional about what is top of funnel, what's mid funnel, what's bottom funnel, and what is the messaging and the psychology sequence that they need to go through to value your offer, right?
Yeah.
So the more you can really map that out, then you can figure out, what do I need to say where? Because the bigger mistake I see is that a lot of times, particularly service providers, if they're utilizing Instagram, they'll talk about their offer like on Instagram when Instagram is technically top of funnel, right? Like people are just scrolling, seeing your content. They're not actively thinking about, you know, if you offer a website or something like kind of like that, like a service or branding even, they're not actively thinking about, oh, I need branding, but they have other problems that are symptoms of them not having their branding locked down. So if you're talking about branding, you're talking about like your offer, which is like deep here, but instead you need to be talking about those symptoms. You need to help them become even problem aware of why should they even bring branding into their view.
Yeah.
What happens a lot of times, we know branding is valuable and it has a huge impact on the business, but our clients don't. And so we can't assume that they are just going to value it. We have to do that legwork of like really owning our messaging and being intentional about that whole process, because what you'll do is you'll flip things around so nothing's in sequence.
Yeah.
And so when it's out of sequence, even if it was all really great, the sequence matters.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all go through a specific process of buyer psychology, and those are just that's just buyer psychology. Like I was talking to another potential client and she's like, well, I don't want to focus on, you know, being negative. I'm just going to focus on the benefits of our offer. And I was like, well, that's just not how buyer psychology works. Your offer needs to solve problems, and problems are what's top of mind and gets attention from humans.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? And so I was like, you can do that, but that's why your sales are struggling, because you have no problem aware content.
Wow.
It's all about benefits. She got that, you know, from someone else who told her like, never like be negative in your messaging. I'm like, it's not about being negative. It's about saying, hey, do you have this problem? I can help you solve that problem, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's not negative. That's
so
great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, your offer needs to solve a problem. If you're positioning it as a nice to have, that's how they see it.
Right.
Right? Like
exactly.
And I think that we can sometimes be doing that and not realizing it. So I guess that was just the other thing I wanted to offer, is just to be very intentional, not only just around like the automation and things like that. It's the sequence that matters, and clearly defining that messaging sequence is vital, because then you could have all the automation but not get any sales. And I've experienced that too. And I hired very expensive coaches to help me figure this out, and nobody could until I figured it out on my own, why my sales funnel wasn't working, why I wasn't getting conversions. And then I was like, oh my gosh, my messaging sequence didn't make sense. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. Now you have to have like both parts, like the strategy and the actual tech.
Yeah. That's good. That's so good. So how do people connect with you, find you, whatever, after they hear this episode? And anything that you want to talk about as far as like what you're offering right now, like the sprint, if you want to talk about that or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So you can come connect with me on Instagram at Morgan Rapp, and just like shoot me a DM if you listen to this, if you have any follow-up questions. I'm honestly here to help. Like I am a pretty open book. I don't really hold back. So if you're in a place where you're like, oh, I just feel so frustrated. I'm doing all the things. I am tired. Like, come shoot me a DM because I understand you more than you think. And I have been there in so many ways. And so I can totally empathize with you, but also tell you, hey, this is probably where you could shift some things or where you could put your focus or actually tangibly help you problem solve. So you can come shoot me a DM. And then my website is in progress. I don't know if it'll be up by the time that you share this, but hopefully that will be up this year, maybe early next year. But I'm really planning on diving more into creating blogs and like content that you can really dig deep into. And then sign up for my newsletter too, because that's where I give, I think, the best stuff. Yeah. And I have been like rebranding and things. So I've been slower on the marketing end. I'll be honest.
Okay. You're in the unleveraged
it's because I've been gearing up. Yes. I have so much to talk about and I'm so excited. But yeah, I've been gearing up to get back on the content wheel. Awesome. And I can't wait. So it's going to be really, really good. So I would say consume my free stuff. If you ever are like, yes, this really aligns, I want to work with Morgan, shoot me a DM. Right now I am doing more like one-on-one. And so I'm actually doing just intensives if you need like help on one specific area, or I do ongoing coaching depending on what you are wanting to achieve. So for example, if you are wanting to launch a full course and have me like help you really go through that whole process, that would be longer. If you were just wanting feedback on messaging of an offer, right? That is something we could cover in intensive. If you're also curious about the micro sales sprint, that is about how to build a high ticket, like nurturing funnel for a high ticket service offer. But it also has a lot of like messaging and marketing principles.
Yes. It's very full
in there. It's kind of about really marketing anything. So I might be splitting it up at some point, but if you want to get in on that course before I split it up and like double the price, you can shoot me a DM as well. So
I really trust like your expertise, your just like your openness. I just feel like that's so powerful for people that are growing. So anyway, thank you for all your time and just been so thankful for everything that you've taught me so far. So thank you. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed the episode, I would love for you to go leave a review. You can connect with us on Instagram and Threads at Wonder Creative Pod. Theme song for the podcast was written and sung by me and produced by Andrew Mindy. We'll catch you next time.